Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thank you to those who are tuned in and who have been tuned in the past, and thanks to those who are now subscribed. That is, after all, the first step to building a loyal base of followers. When you subscribe, you'll ensure that you get every episode as we release them. Also, thanks to those who have referred others to the podcast. That's certainly helpful in building an audience. And then finally, thanks to those who've reached out with questions and comments. Questions and comments are very helpful as we come up with new topics or try to come up with new topics. Today we're going to talk about, well, we'll always talk about networking, but today we're going to talk about aspects of our networking. When people think of networking, they view it mainly as being about meeting new people. And that's not wrong necessarily. Adding new people to your network is important. After all, your network will never achieve its full potential if your networking is forever tethered to the 5 or 6 people in your company or business that you started with or the people you went to college with. So meeting new people is certainly a part of networking. But while meeting new people is important to your network reaching its potential, equally important is capitalizing on the networking potential that already exists in your network. Think about it. You're surrounded by a plethora of great entrepreneurs, sales reps, and professionals. There's a lot of social capital locked up in those relationships. So don't be so focused exclusively on those you haven't met that you cut yourself off from the networking potential with those you already know. Now, when it comes to people you already know, they can fit into 2 general categories. The first category consists of people you know and who are currently within your life. They're friends and family, co-workers, clients, vendors that you encounter on a reasonably consistent basis. And this category has loads of social capital that's right there for you to utilize and benefit from. The second category of people consists of the people you know but who are someone you don't have contact with on a reasonable basis. Or maybe it's a long time since you've had contact with them. These are friends and family you've lost touch with, and that happens. Former coworkers, former clients, past vendors. This category is packed full of networking potential that you've likely lost touch with for whatever reason. Think about this second category. We're going to talk about this today. It has a very massive potential to it. In this category, there are high school friends and connections from that time period, college classmates, colleagues, professors, teaching assistants, contacts from internships and volunteer opportunities that were happening when you were in school, perhaps, co-workers, subordinates, and superiors from your first job, and maybe that second job or business venture or the third one. And even if you're still at the first job or business venture, the people around you have not stood still. They've changed. People change jobs, they change careers, they move, they retire, sometimes sadly they die. The point is that people fall out of your life. Sometimes it seems they fall out faster than you're able to replace them. However, they fall out of your life. And for whatever the reason, the reality is that they're still part of your network. It's just like, here's another analogy, it's like a great suit or an outfit that somehow has been pushed to the back of your closet. It's still within your wardrobe, just not something you're wearing. So whatever the analogy or metaphor you go with, life is not static. It doesn't stay still. There are constant changes. As such, life seems to naturally push people out of your world. The question to address is whether there's networking potential that you can reclaim from these relationships. The relationships that have seemed to have gone dormant in your life for whatever reason. Is there potential to these relationships? Is there social capital that you can reclaim? Science seems to indicate that there is. In 2011, 3 researchers from 3 separate research universities, and I recently wrote an article on this that is being published on the Innovate New Albany website. And in that, I carve out a lot of this information because, quite frankly, nobody wants to read it, but it's easier with the podcast to kind of share it. But this was 3 separate research universities: Rutgers, George Washington University, and Northwestern University. All pretty prominent universities as it goes. Anyhow, they collaborated on a study primarily aimed at determining whether people would benefit from reconnecting with what we'll call dormant ties. And for the purpose of the study, the researchers defined a dormant tie to be an individual that you'd not communicated with for at least 3 years, or in the study, that's what they told the participants. Somebody you had not communicated with in at least 3 years. Now, to conduct the study, the research team asked 224 executives in 4 executive MBA programs. 3 were in the United States and 1 was in Canada. Not that that matters, but just to kind of give you some detail. And what they asked these executive MBA students to do is to reconnect with 2 of their dormant ties and seek ideas, insight, or assistance on a project they were involved with at work. To give you some background, if you're not familiar, executive MBA programs generally operate on the weekend and are generally comprised of individuals who work a day job. They're professionals, they work for a big company, and the company has decided to send them to MBA school, or people have decided to invest in themselves, and so they'll work a full week with all their assignments and all the things they need to do. And then on the weekends, generally Friday through Sunday, they will go off to MBA school and take classes, a couple days full of classes, and then set about doing their homework throughout the week. So at any rate, these MBA programs, or these students that were in these MBA programs, what they found was that the average age of the student was slightly over 38 years old, and each of them, on average, worked in an organization with about 24,000 employees. So these executive MBA students are coming from large companies. They're moving up the corporate ladder, and they have projects to work on. And what they wanted them to do with respect to these projects is take a project you're working on at work and tap into a dormant tie, somebody you haven't talked to in 3 years, and ask for some insight, some help on the particular project. Now, the researchers encouraged the executive MBA students to not use email to reconnect with these dormant ties. Rather, they asked that the reconnection be done over the phone, or if possible, to do it in person. But at any rate, prior to reaching out to their dormant ties, the MBA students completed an email survey. They geared this survey, through this survey, what they wanted to do was have the MBA students identify 15 people within their network that they had consulted on the project. These could be, these were non-dormant ties. They could be co-workers. They could be people within their company. It could be somebody outside their company. Maybe it's a spouse or a friend that they golfed with or saw on a regular basis. Along with identifying the contacts that these MBA students had reached out to on this project, the researchers' survey wanted to uncover the nature of the relationship that the MBA student had with the active tie. In other words, was this person a coworker, a supervisor, a client or customer, or something external from the company that they were working at? And then to what extent was the feedback or the information they got from these active ties, was it useful or not useful, to kind of rate what they were getting? And so anyhow, they set the students out on this project. This was an actual class assignment. Probably met with lots of moans and groans because people don't necessarily like to reconnect with people. And so they gave them this assignment, and there was a time frame to it. And a month later, the researchers then asked the MBA students to complete a second email survey. This one was aimed at getting the results of contacting their dormant tie, as well as getting additional specific information to other things that were going on with respect to the 15 people that they had identified in their original pool in the first survey. In addition, the researchers then asked the students to submit a short essay describing their experiences. What became of it? They wanted to get some. They were getting some, qualitative information, but they were getting a lot of quantitative information, I should say. But they also wanted some qualitative information, emotions, how they feel, things like that. Well, at any rate, the researchers, after compiling and reviewing all the information provided, determined that reconnecting with dormant ties gave the MBA students a couple things. One we'll call trust continuation. The dormant ties seem to maintain a high degree of trust of the MBA student as compared to current ties, even though 3 years had passed since their last communications. According to the research team, it seemed that the trust and the respect that the executive MBA student had originally achieved with the dormant tie relationship didn't dissipate, even though the relationship went dormant. That to me was not surprising. If you stop and think about it, if you think about your own experience, if you've been to a high school or a college reunion any time in the last 5 or 10 years, and you don't need to indicate what year it might be, when you go back to these reunions, you run into people, and it seems like that those relationships, that trust, it's there. We've talked know, like, and trust, and the know, like, and trust is there, and it might be a little rusty, but it comes back really quickly. The second thing that the researchers found that the MBAs reported on was what they called novel information. The dormant tie yielded more unique and useful information as compared to the people that they saw day to day. According to the research team, it seemed though that even though the relationship had become inactive, the dormant tide didn't stagnate. Rather, the dormant tide continued to grow and develop, and as a result, came to the MBA student with unique experiences and insights that offered tremendous value with respect to the project they were working on. And if you stop and think about it, I mean, people fall out of your life all the time, and we tend to lose track of them, and we tend to think, okay, they are kind of stuck in that place. And that's not true at all. They tend to grow. They have their own experiences. They maybe read different books and take a totally different path, but they're advancing themselves as things move along. I think about my own experience with a college friend, a fraternity brother, and a teammate. He wasn't dumb. He wasn't dumb at all. He didn't necessarily apply himself in college. And at the time, if we were all had to bet on it, we probably would have bet that he would end up owning a bar. And boy, were we wrong. He obviously graduated. He graduated with us. But last I checked, he'd gotten his master's and a PhD and is now a professor at a university near Chicago. Never would have guessed. But here's a situation where this particular individual, I've certainly lost track of him and heard about him through friends, but his life has continued to move on. And that happens with all the people in all your dormant ties. They're moving on, and they're taking on new experiences. They're gathering new information. They have contacts that are very, very beneficial if you are willing to reconnect with them. So no doubt you have lots and lots of contacts, many of which where the relationship is not what it once was. Often these relationships become dormant or inactive because the two of you have drifted apart. It might be job mobility. It might be changing interests or other time demands. As we move about our lives and get married and have kids, things change. Despite all of this, there is networking potential that you can reclaim from these contacts. They're still in your network. They're just dormant. The first step in doing this is to simply conduct an inventory or a roll call of the individuals in your network that you've not communicated with in some time. And unlike the research study, you don't have to necessarily limit yourself to people with whom you've not communicated in the last 3 years. You can add to this list really anyone who's no longer on your radar and someone you're not necessarily in contact with. For example, I was at a networking event a couple weeks ago and ran into an individual I hadn't talked to in about 6 months. Maybe it was a little longer than that. And again, we hit it right off, and the know, like, and trust was there, and there was opportunity for both of us in that conversation, and I'll save that for another episode. But then the next step, once you've identified these individuals, is simply reconnect with the people on the list. There's no real magic to how this should be done. It's certainly advisable to follow sound networking practices. That is, don't just attempt to get from the dormant relationship, but find ways that you can add value as well. Believe me, they're anxious to reconnect with you, will be excited that you're reconnecting. Don't necessarily lead with, hey, here's what I need, but try and reconnect with them on a personal level as well. What's been happening, let's get up to speed. But the point of this episode is that your current network is really made up of both people you consistently interact with, as well as those that have become dormant in your life. These dormant ties have tremendous value if you invest time in reconnecting with them. Remember, dormant ties still have the sense that they know you, like you, and trust you. It might need some dusting off, but it's still there, and it's way easier than building a relationship from scratch. Also remember that the lives of these dormant ties have continued to move forward, and as such, they can serve as a treasure trove of new contacts, unique experiences and perspective, as well as fresh ideas. So don't overlook your dormant ties. It's like reaching into the back of your closet and pulling out that great suit or snazzy outfit and putting it on again. Finally, to wrap up, remember, AmSpirit Business Connections has a unique franchise opportunity that involves helping small business professionals become more successful through a referral-based networking program. It only involves a couple hours, a few days a week, and would be a great franchise for an attorney, accountant, realtor, business coach, a consultant, to add on to what they're already doing and get better networked at the same time. Why just be a renter when you can own the building? Why just be in a business network when you can own the business network? If you or someone you know would like to learn more, please contact me using the email at the end of this podcast or the one we've provided in the show notes.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connections. All rights reserved.